So hi, I'm Ellie Kirkpatrick. I am with Antrim. I'm the marketing and outreach coordinator. If you don't know about Antrim, we are a nonprofit. We host the Chain of Lakes Water Trail. Our mission is to protect our water resources by using paddle sports to connect people to our waterways. So safety is very important to us at Antrim. We do programming all season long. A lot of it is dedicated to safety, and we're excited to be offering some safety programming during the off season. We have our upcoming 3-part webinar coming up on weather forecasting for on the water. And we're super excited to have Mark Thornton here with us today to talk a little bit more about that webinar, as well as answer your weather related questions. So Mark is with LakeErieWX Marine Weather, which is a company that's dedicated to providing marine weather education and forecasting resources for recreational boaters. So I'm going to let Mark take it over here and talk again a little bit about the webinar, and then himself, give you his background, and then we'll jump into just some questions.
All right, thanks, Ellie. All right, so I guess I'll kind of start with a little bit of my background. Been boating for a long time. Grew up in central Illinois. My father was a fisherman, so we had a small fishing boat, used on the local lake. And then right after I got out of high school, I kind of wanted to, get some independence and do my own thing, and ended up getting a canoe. So it was kind of interesting because, so this is the, kind of the mid 70s. And so I ordered a canoe that actually came in 2 pieces. So they made the canoe a fiberglass canoe and then sawed it in half and put it in a box and put it in the back of the semi, and it got delivered to my parents' house with the glue and the fiberglass and stuff to put it back together. So it's kind of, I had very little money, so it's kind of a great way to get started. So used that canoe for a couple of years with a real good friend of mine, and then kind of moved on to something a little more traditional canoe. So I've been paddling for, I guess, more than 40 years, 45 years, something like that. And then about 30 years ago, my wife and I got into sailing. So I'm predominantly a sailor now, but we still do have kayaks and, get out kayaking as much as we can. But essentially, I've been boating in some way for a little more than 50 years. Kind of a little scary to say that, but it's been a very, very long time. So about 20 years ago or so, it was in the around 2004, I guess, I saw an advertisement in a magazine for an online weather class through Penn State. I thought, well, this is kind of interesting. As a boater, weather is really, really important. And my goal with many things is to be kind of self-reliant. So I thought, well, if I could learn to do some forecasting, it might, kind of improve the safety of our journeys. So I called the university to find out a little bit more about the program and so forth, and a little bit more about Penn State in general, and discovered that they were one of the leading meteorological schools in the country. And they were starting out this pilot project of teaching meteorology online to folks who weren't traditional students. By then I was, I had a full-time job doing something else. And so that, well, this was, kind of unique, and it was a pilot project. And so I talked to the professor, and his enthusiasm was extraordinary. So I signed up for the program. It was a, 1 semester class, kind of an introduction to basic weather forecasting. And I loved it. It was like, I could sort of feel my life changing. It was, it was really exciting. It was way different than what I did for a living. And as that class ended, they contacted me and they said, we're thinking about continuing this on into a 2-year program. And it would be a, postgraduate certificate program in weather forecasting. So kind of basic forecasting, tropical forecasting, severe weather forecasting, and then kind of a practicum to, semester to wrap things up. Would you be interested in enrolling? But sure, I love it so far. And so I went through that program. I was one of the first graduating class was 8 people. So I was in that first group graduated all the way back in the fall of 2006. It was an extraordinary program. And so then about 10 years ago, decided to start teaching weather forecasting skills to recreational boaters. Basically sailors, are the ones that really like to come to weather classes, but power boaters, paddlers, stand-up paddle boarders, anyone who spends time on the water has sort of been in my classes over the past 10 years or so. I haven't really kept track, but I think I've taught thousands of people, over the course of these 10 years. It's been a lot of fun. So got the upcoming webinar starts on Monday. So it's 3 weeks, starts at 7 and ends at 8:30. And let me just, I can share my screen here and pop up the flyer so everybody can see that while we're chatting. So basically, this is an introductory weather forecasting class, focusing on marine weather forecasting. It starts at the very beginning, so you don't have to have any pre-existing knowledge. And we're going to cover things such as, the basic principles of kind of how the weather works, how to interpret weather maps, which is it's the most important place to start, is to be able to look at a surface weather map and sort of define what the large scale weather pattern is going to be during your outing. And then from there, we'll talk about wind forecasting and wave forecasting, and then move on to some severe weather topics, such as sort of understanding thunderstorms, how to forecast and avoid thunderstorms, and how to use Doppler weather radar, which is sort of part and parcel with sort of managing a severe weather event. So that's kind of the plan over the course of the 3 weeks. The goal is to give you some basic skills to make your own marine weather forecast, to be a better weather consumer of products from the National Weather Service and so forth, and just to kind of and it's fun. It's a great skill to have if you spend some time outdoors, and give you all the skills you need to produce your own marine weather forecast. Yeah, finish sharing my screen here. All right.
Go over some kind of frequently asked questions next.
Yeah, I would say that the bulk of the questions in my seminars usually revolve around severe weather. Some aspect of severe weather about are all thunderstorms the same? The answer is no, they're not. There's, several different varieties of thunderstorms. A lot of things about how you can predict when there's going to be a thunderstorm outbreak, or when a thunderstorm's outbreak's underway and it's sort of heading your direction, how do you know if it's going to reach you or not? And the tools that are needed to manage it. Radar is a great resource, but like most tools, you really need to know how to use it, because there's some quirks with radar, and to really get the best use out of it, it's really helps to get, take a seminar to learn what some of those quirks are. It's kind of the ins and outs of Doppler weather radar. So by and large, severe weather is the leading question, and closely followed up by wind forecasting. Again, a lot of the folks in my seminar are sailors or even paddlers, really concerned about the wind. It can really make a journey much, much longer than what you anticipated, or much more uncomfortable, or even colder, if the wind switches out of the wrong direction. So those are kind of the two top, subjects that people ask about.
Okay. I'll just ask a few other questions. So what are your favorite weather apps?
All right, so I have I actually use just a few. I like sort of relying basically on the internet for most of my forecasting, but I like LakeErieWX. So it's LuckGrib, and that is that's an iOS product, so it really works very well on an iPad, or I don't think it comes for Android. And that is a forecast resource that uses GRIB files. So GRIB files are just tiny little electronic files that contain weather information. They're very small, so it's very easy to send across a sluggish internet connection. Folks that sail across the open waters of the ocean or the open waters of the Great Lakes, or even do backwoods type camping and traveling. You can actually download a GRIB file over a satellite phone or a satellite device, something like an Iridium Go or something like that. And you can actually get weather data, through this very small product right down to your iPad when you barely have a cellular connection. So LuckGrib is really good for sort of displaying that information. I also use Windy, which is another app. I basically use that as the web-based app for general forecasting, for looking at weather maps and high and low temperature and whether it's going to rain or not. I really like Weather Underground. Kind of a really easy interface. It also has a pretty slick tool for warning you when severe weather warnings have been issued for your area. So you obviously have to allow permission for it to know your location and to send you notifications. But if severe weather is on the way, I get a little pop-up on my phone that then you can then read, the warning that's been issued by the Weather Service. Then for radar, for Doppler weather radar from the National Weather Service, by far the best radar app out there is called Radar Scope. Fairly cheap. It's for iOS or Android. I think it's like $10 to buy the app and about $15 for a data subscription to get additional things like watches and warnings and lightning strikes and the projected path of the thunderstorms. So the best $15 you're going to spend, this year to get great data overlays on your radar app. The one thing to kind of remember, one pointer with using radar app or with weather apps is, a lot of folks, particularly, folks who are kind of, really into competitive sports, whether it's competitive paddling or sail racing, they'll argue with one another over which is the best forecasting app, whether it's Predict Wind or Sail Flow or Windy or, whatever it might be, LuckGrib. And the thing to remember with almost all of these apps is that the underlying data source is the same. It's forecast data that comes out from the National Weather Service. So your app manufacturer, whatever weather app you have, is really a display app. They're not doing any forecasting. They're just providing data from the National Weather Service. So I always sort of get a kick when people start, like, no, my weather app's better than your weather app. It's more accurate. It's like, well, the bottom line is, it's the same data. So pick an app based upon, if you like its display and interface or not, because the underlying data is the same across most of them.
That's great information. Yeah. So I feel like you've answered a lot of questions. Maybe the last thing I'll ask is just, why should boaters attend the weather seminar?
I think it sort of comes back to what I said earlier. Self-reliance. When you're, once you shove off on your journey, you're really on your own. And so, you can check the forecast, ahead of time, of course, but, it's important to kind of check it underway and be able to kind of understand how the weather works and how to do your own little forecasting. So, when you're out on on an afternoon journey or you're on a week-long canoe trip in the Boundary Waters or something, to be able to do your own forecasting is really important to make sure that your journey stays safe and comfortable. No one's happy. Once you get cold and wet, no one is happy. So being a better forecaster can really, again, make your journeys a lot more comfortable and a great deal more safe.
That's great. Well, thank you so much for being here with us today and kind of providing this little teaser on the seminar. So just as a reminder to people watching this, you can sign up for that, and you want to sign up before the 28th. Before February 28th, and you can find more information and the registration link on our website. So paddleantrim.com/events. And you can always email us with questions, info@paddleantrim.com. So yeah.
All right, one last thing I'd like to add before we go. All of the sessions are going to be recorded and will be made available until I believe it's July 1. So if you'd like to attend, but you have a conflict or two, don't let that be a deterrent, because you'll easily have access to the recordings. If you have any questions on the recorded materials, I'm more than willing to answer them via email. So again, don't let a conflict deter you from registering.
That's a great point. Cool. Great. Well, thank you,
All right.
Mark.
All right. See you all on Monday.